Charlie Kirk, the founder of Turning Point USA and Turning Point Action, a young, courageous political activist, was brutally assassinated on September 10th at Utah Valley University when he was speaking to a crowd. Charlie was a youth leader. He always debates people in good faith. He believes in open and public discourse and peaceful exchange of ideas. After his death, the internet has seen an influx of grief, anger, and unfortunately mockery, and even celebration. Now, Charlie is a conservative leader, and it is not surprising that his ideas do not appeal to all walks of life. It is not surprising that people on the left are not feeling the same level of sorrow as those on the right. However, I believe all human lives are dignified, and every single one deserves basic respect. It is quite relieving to see on some social media platforms that there are many people in the comment section saying they mourn for Charlie's death despite them disagreeing with some of his takes. But there is also a significant number of comments and videos disgracefully mocking Charlie. In this video, I don't want to waste time on drawing your attention to the blatantly nasty comments and personal attacks on Charlie, but I would like to debunk the four most popular talking points that some progressives have been spreading around to discredit Charlie across TikTok, Threads, Instagram, X, YouTube, and so on. Number 1. Empathy.
Charlie Kirk has literally stated that he doesn't believe in empathy.
I can't stand the word empathy, actually. I think empathy is a made-up new age term that it does a lot of damage.
The first point some progressives love to mock Charlie is about empathy. This claim often surrounds a video clip, suggesting that Charlie has once said that he can't stand empathy, and that empathy was a made-up new age term that does a lot of damage. These people believe that because Charlie dislikes empathy, they don't have to empathize with Charlie's death as well. But did Charlie really say that? Let's look at the original longer version of that particular video clip.
So the new communication strategy for Democrats, now that their polling advantage is collapsing in every single state. It's collapsing in Ohio, it's collapsing even in Arizona. It is now a race where Blake Masters is in striking distance. Kari Lake is doing very, very well. The new communication strategy is not to do what Bill Clinton used to do, where he would say, I feel your pain. Instead, it is to say, you're actually not in pain. So let's just, a little, very short clip. Bill Clinton in the 1990s, it was all about empathy and sympathy. I can't stand the word empathy, actually. I think empathy is a made-up new age term that does a lot of damage, but it is very effective when it comes to politics. Sympathy I prefer more than empathy. That's a separate topic for a different time.
What Charlie was saying is that he doesn't like the usage of the term empathy, and that in comparison with empathy, he likes the term sympathy more. If you actually look at the meaning of these two words in the English dictionary, you will find out that there are subtle differences between them, but honestly, one thing is for sure, and that is both terms involve caring and at least trying to understand the suffering that someone is enduring. I feel like in daily usage, we all have different linguistic preferences, and it's safe to say that Charlie was not discouraging people from caring and understanding others' pain, as he literally said he preferred sympathy over empathy. Charlie's message in the clip was trying to say that the Democratic Party has become more arrogant than in the past, where Democrat politicians like Clinton will at least pretend to show sympathy towards the public. If Charlie does not believe in the expression of understanding and care towards people's suffering, then his message wouldn't make sense at all. What's more, Charlie didn't like the term empathy because you couldn't truly feel exactly what others are feeling, and to Charlie, that attempt of absorbing other people's feelings could blind us into becoming more emotional in the process, and we are easier to abandon truth, moral principle, and clarity when we are blinded by emotions, and we are then easier to be manipulated by other people and by the media. Number 2. Gun control.
In 2023, Kirk said that gun deaths were worth it to ensure the preservation of the Second Amendment right.
The most common narrative that people on the progressive side, including many mainstream media, are now spreading across the internet is the so-called irony, with Charlie Kirk, who has always been advocating for loose gun control and the Second Amendment rights, was eventually shot to death. In many cases, they put up the video clip where Charlie Kirk said some gun deaths are worth it in order to keep the Second Amendment. On the surface, it does sound ironic, but let's break it down a little bit, shall we? First, let's carefully take a look at what Charlie actually advocates. He defended gun ownership because of two major reasons. Number 1, gun ownership is an important right for people to protect themselves against tyrannical governments. Number 2, guns are crucial for people to protect themselves from criminals, home invaders, and so on.
Why do you think we believe it's a right? It's because we believe that, God forbid, if the government ever becomes tyrannical, we need an ability to defend ourselves against a tyrannical government. In a state like Rhode Island or New York, it could take a woman upwards of 30 days to get a gun. So let's say a man wants to actually do harm to her, and she gets threats and the police won't intervene. I think she should be able to get a gun that afternoon to protect herself.
Now let's take a closer look at the statement that the people on the left love to cite.
And a lot of people are upset. But I'm seeing people argue for the other side that they want to take our Second Amendment or rights away. How do we convince them that it's important to have the right to defend ourselves and all that good stuff?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you. So I'm a big Second Amendment fan, but I think most politicians are cowards when it comes to defending why we have a Second Amendment. This is why I would not be a good politician, or maybe I would, I don't know, but because I actually speak my mind. The Second Amendment is not about hunting. I love hunting. The Second Amendment is not even about personal defense. That is important. The Second Amendment is there, God forbid, so that you can defend yourself against a tyrannical government.
Come on.
And if that talk scares you, wow, that's radical, Charlie. I don't know about that. Well, then you have not really read any of the literature of our founding fathers. Yep. Number two, you've not read any 20th century history. You're just living in Narnia. By the way, if you were actually living in Narnia, you would be wiser than wherever you're living, because C.S. Lewis was really smart. So I don't know what alternative universe you're living in. You just don't want to face reality that governments tend to get tyrannical, and that if people need an ability to protect themselves and their communities and their families. Now, we must also be real. We must be honest with the population. Having an armed citizenry comes with a price. And that is part of liberty. Driving comes with a price. 50,000 people die on the road every year. That's a price. You get rid of driving, you'd have 50,000 less auto fatalities. But we have decided that the benefit of driving, speed, accessibility, mobility, having products, services, is worth the cost of 50,000 people dying on the road. Wow. So we need to be very clear that you're not going to get gun deaths to zero. It will not happen. Right. You can significantly reduce them through having more fathers in the home, by having more armed guards in front of schools. We should have an honest and clear reductionist view of gun violence, but we should not have a utopian one. You will never live in a society when you have an armed citizenry and you won't have a single gun death. That is nonsense. It's drivel. But I think it's worth it. I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year, so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights. That is a prudent deal. It is rational. Nobody talks like this. They live in a complete alternate universe. Sure. So then how do you reduce? Very simple. People say, oh, Charlie, how do you stop school shootings? I don't know. How did we stop shootings at baseball games? Because we have armed guards outside of baseball games. That's why. How did we stop all the shootings at airports? We have armed guards outside of airports. How do we stop all the shootings at banks? We have armed guards outside of banks. How do we stop all the shootings at gun shows? Notice there's not a lot of mass shootings at gun shows. There's all these guns because everyone's armed. If our money and our sporting events and our airplanes have armed guards, why don't our children?
Notice how Charlie describes gun death. It is unfortunate. We don't want gun deaths. Nobody wants gun deaths. But the cruel reality is we can never make gun death drop to zero with an armed citizenry. And for Charlie, it is sort about exchange between the benefits that inventions/new technologies bring and the downsides. It is sort about balance. So I don't understand why such statements of his seems to be so unacceptable to lots of people. And I believe it is one, again, the same take things out of context approach that blinded many people. And two, many people seems to have not fully understood what Charlie was saying here. Again, Charlie said gun death is unfortunate, but to him, the good guns bring outweigh the damage they cause. On top of that, what he was also proposing here is to reduce gun deaths in many ways, and one of them is to protect the unprotected with armed guards. His idea is similar to Balance of Terror and even resembles Mad Mutual Assured Destruction a little bit. Not entirely the same, I know. Instead of saying, hey, we should all drop our guns and no one is allowed to own one, he is saying, We should all arm ourselves with guns to ensure the balance of power. Again, whether you like it or not, it is a very realistic, practical approach to gun violence. He was for reducing gun deaths, not passively accepting gun deaths like these comments and media suggest. To correlate his reductionist viewpoints on gun control to disregard for lives is so wrong on so many levels, which is the first reason why the RNX statement is flawed. Second, there's literally no linkage between gun ownership and deliberate not just murder, but assassination, political assassination. There's nothing ironic here. The right to bear arms and the right to murder are two different stories, and the danger of linguistics is how easy it is to manipulate people's minds with words. Saying it is ironic for Charlie, a gun ownership supporter who dies of gun, is the same as saying it is ironic for anybody who was stabbed to death that was also against ruining registration for purchasing knives, or anybody who was killed by cars that was also against banning automobiles. Just because two things kind of relate to each other doesn't mean they are the same thing. For Charlie and me and lots of other Americans, all tools have their unique usage, and some tools can be equally dangerous without proper knowledge and prior training. The problem is always on the user, on humans, not on the tools who can do anything without us to begin with. The nature of Charlie's murder is an assassination, not any random school shooting. The shooter has meticulously planned for the killing, considering he shot Charlie from the rooftop of Losey Center, about 130 meters away from University Quads, the site of the shooting. Even if the rights to gun ownership was abolished, there are still numerous ways for the shooter to get their hands on guns if they were committed with enough willpower and resources. And let's not forget that the former Japanese Prime Minister was also shot to death in Japan, where gun ownership is basically non-existent. So again, we don't see a close linkage between a deliberate political assassination to the right to gun ownership. Also, is passing more gun restrictive laws really as effective as the progressives claim it to be? US is the country with the least gun regulations. It is one of the few countries where you mostly don't need any permits or license for owning firearms. Yet the firearm-related homicide rate of the US is lower than some countries with their tighter gun control laws like Mexico, Brazil, Jamaica, and Honduras, to name but a few. We could argue all day the necessity and effectiveness of law and the roles other societal and economic factors play in gun violence. Gun ownership, gun control, and gun violence are all complex topics, yet you couldn't really say Charlie is absolutely wrong here.
If you make that argument that people should be able to own firearms against a usurpacious potential tyrannical government, you're going to have negative externalities. You're going to have gang shootings. You're going to have mass shootings. The question is, how do we minimize it? And the question is, how do we reduce it to almost zero? And we have never had that proper conversation. For example, if banks and sporting events have armed guards, every school in America should have armed guards sitting 24/7 at the school. Period. End of story. Reduce and minimize the criminality and the shootings through prudent and proper restrictions, which most of the times mean good people with a firearm to protect against a bad person with a firearm. You need your politicians to stop tap dancing around the issue. They're afraid to make the argument I just made because the media mocks them.
After Charlie's murder, the media started pouring over with reports and articles. The gun deaths are worth it line quickly became progressive media's favorite. Like what we've discussed, Charlie was simply implying that there is always a cost for everything. Yet by only showing one portion of his entire message, these news media outlets are literally painting him as a cold-blooded right-wing who couldn't care less about people getting shot. They didn't mention how Charlie was for reducing gun deaths. They didn't look at the practicality of eliminating gun deaths. They didn't care what Charlie's message actually was. The outcome could be disastrous, but what I think is worse than the US media is the media abroad, which took reference from these flawed news outlets and copy and pasted the whole damn reports in Google Translate before releasing them to the public.
柯克係政治評論人同活動家，18歲已經創立組織美國轉折點，喺校園推廣保守派理念。柯克曾經話：為咗保障民眾擁有槍械嘅權利，有人死於槍下都係值得。佢被視為特朗普嘅親密朋友，上年特朗普再次勝出總統大選之後，曾經盛讚柯克為明年選民支持。
This is iCable News in Hong Kong, by the way. Imagine people's reaction after watching the news. Oh, who is this guy? Oh, he forms 2 organizations. Oh, whatever. Oh, he's okay with people getting shots every year? Wow, what a horrible person. We should go now. We should go now. Now, Palestine.
A very close second has to be Palestinians, and I'm just absolutely shocked that a man like him would be so pro-Israel. I'm shook to my core.
Many conservatives have addressed the topic already. Charlie has addressed it clearly already.
Israel's not a perfect country, but for whatever reason, the obsession about where half the world's Jews live, which happens to be a small outpost of freedom and liberty with lots of problems, surrounded by literally 1 billion Muslims, that this is our #1 focus geopolitically, that people use the word genocide, and you won't use the word genocide when Jews are killed, but you do use the word genocide when Palestinians are killed, shows the moral confusion on this topic. And would you say what's happening in Armenia right now is a genocide?
If Israel stopped fighting, what would happen? If they laid down all their guns tomorrow, what would happen?
Personally, I can't say. I'm not in charge of any of the leadership.
Yes, so all the Jews would be killed. If Hamas laid down...
It's not about Judaism, though.
If
Israel's actually the ones that have taken Palestine's land.
Okay,
and are
again,
killing people
I'm just trying to find some moral clarity. If Hamas laid down all of their weapons, what would we have?
There would be no more Palestine.
Peace is what we would have.
No, that's...
We would have peace.
Excuse my language, but that's bullshit. And you know
okay,
it.
so let me ask this. Why did Israel give Gaza back to the Arab Muslims? For peace. Why did they give the Sinai to Egypt?
Gaza?
For
why
peace.
Did they throw missiles over there?
No, hold on a second. Why did they give the Sinai to Egypt? For peace. Why did they give the Gaza Strip to the Palestinian Authority? For peace. Well, in Hamas's charter, what does it say?
I'm not defending Hamas.
Well, hold on a second. Right. You're defending the Palestinian Authority, which is partners with Hamas, and they duly elected them.
No. I'm not defending
How
that
is
either.
Hamas's charter any different than Nazi Germany's charter towards the Jews?
I'm not defending any of that. And for one...
So what are you defending?
Hold on.
Exactly.
For one, I'm defending the right of Palestine to exist, which... I want to clarify, I am not telling you that you're being Islamophobic by supporting Israel. I'm not telling you that you want to kill the Muslims. So trying to say that the existence of Palestine
here's the fact. Let me tell you. I think this last weekend displayed the holes in your argument. When Jews go for their high holy day, Arabs come in and kill Jews. When Arabs want to have peace, the Jews will come to the table for a peace agreement. Abraham Accords, the Oslo Accords. Any time that the Arabs want to talk, the Jews will come to the table to talk in the pursuit of peace. Meanwhile, this weekend, in a slight vulnerability, what happened? Jews are celebrating the end of Yom Kippur, the reading of the Torah, and they come in and they kill 900 Jews. And answer me this. If this was an isolated incident, why were they greeted as heroes by the people of Gaza after they killed 900 women and children?
I want to make this clear once more because you seem to not be understanding. I am not defending these actions. I am simply refuting the claims that you made up earlier in this argument.
Here's the thing. I think a two-state solution sounds great if you don't actually live in reality. Let me tell you what reality is. The Arabs don't want to govern their own people. They would rather hate Jews. Every day, they're saying death to the Jews, kill the Jews. They do not want to govern their own people. There is no middle ground when they're screaming to the sky for Intifada.
Netanyahu declared that he will send missiles to Palestine in an area where the Palestinian civilians are not able to leave.
Wait, hold on a second. You mean to Gaza?
Yes.
Right, where they actually gave warnings to apartment buildings. What kind of... Israel's so bad that they tell people to leave before they bomb them. Hamas comes on a holy day into kibbutzes and cuts women's heads off at concerts. The moral equivalence is so different. Tell me one situation where Israel has not come to the table. Israel has given up land. When was the last time the Palestinian Authority willingly gave up land for peace?
Israel's
never,
the land
because they don't want peace. They want dead Jews. And we as Americans should never put up with the intentional extermination of Jews again in our country. Thanks for being here. If the Cuban government came and killed 50,000 Americans, which is the population equivalent, right? Sure. So 900 Jews would be 50,000 Americans. Yeah. I would completely support war against a country that kills 50,000 Americans. Cuba is the same, but similar distance, right? So yes, I would restrict food, water. It would be all out war against a country that touched our homeland. War is the worst thing humans do. Here's my prayer, that Israel doesn't overreact. Americans don't send troops, and that this is short, and that the terrorists that did this are held to justice. That's what we need to publicly say. But I am not. And you're right. There are kids that are going to die. That pains me. The heaviness should be on you. But the answer is you just kind of roll over and allow people to come into your country, into kibbutzes, into concerts, and mowing down people and say, you know, catch you next time? They build their headquarters under hospitals. It's a fact. They use the entire population of women and children in Gaza as a massive 2.5 million person human shield. That's sick. There are no good solutions here.
The war started because 1,300 Jews were killed and 200 were taken hostage. And when you declare war on Israel, expect a firestorm in reaction. Let me finish, I let you talk. Israel, at its holiest day of the calendar year besides Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, Samat Torah, the 50-year anniversary of the Six-Day War. On Shabbat, Hamas invaded Israel, deciding to go recklessly to music concerts, to homes, to kibbutzes, and taking 200 plus hostages. They knew what they were doing. In one of the most cloistered urban environments on the planet, 2 million people live in a place where it's impossible to wage war. Impossible. Where they wear civilian clothing, they violate every tenet of the Geneva Convention, and the IDF, when they do something right, they get no credit. When they do life-saving surgeries of a Gazan child, they get no credit. When they drop leaflets, they get no credit. But when they happen to bomb a place where they are operating their military from, which we now know from third-party verified sources, hundreds of Hamas military operations are in mosques, schools, and hospitals. I'm sorry, the country where they were living in relative peace on October 6th, that all of a sudden we had a war and Hamas started the war. And I don't see people that were really upset about the 2 million Germans that were killed in World War II, civilians. A tragic truth of war is that civilians die. I don't like it and you don't like it. And they brought it upon themselves. The only operation and entity to blame is the leadership of Hamas, not the Israeli government, for fighting this defensive war after they were invaded.
Loud and clear. Who started the ongoing war? Hamas. Who got blames for the ongoing war? Israel. Which side has arbitrarily butchered 1,200 people and took 250 hostages back home? Hamas. Which side has sent out leaflets to warn the civilians on the other side to run from the air-bomb target buildings? Israel. Again, which side is the progressives blaming? Israel. What is going on? We have no clue. The left loves to cite all the numbers and data, how many children has died. Oh yes, by the way, they love to mention children, as that somehow is easier to draw sympathy from the public. They never try to think that there might be other more plausible explanations that so many children have died in Gaza except the IDF is cruel. They never thought of the possibilities that maybe the Gaza Health Ministry has been giving them false casualty numbers, or that each country has different demographics and Gaza has more than half of its estimated 2.06 million population below 20 years old, with 44% of all citizens being children below 14 years old. Or that Hamas has been continuously using kids as human shields so as to garner sympathy from international society. On this note, I love Charlie for being a moral absolute who is very clear about right and wrong. He was never vague about the truth he always stood for. Last but not least, black pilots. Another point the left wings love to bring forth after September 10th. Many of them claims Charlie was racist because he said black pilots are not qualified. Let's look at what Charlie actually said in the original clip from his podcast.
And that's why I think this United story and the DEI story hits so hard, because we've all been in the back of a plane when the turbulence hits, or when you're flying through a storm and you're like, I'm so glad I saw the guy with the right stuff and the square jaw get into the cockpit before we took off, and I feel better now thinking about that. No, I mean, like,
you want to go thought crime? Like, I'm sorry, if I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified.
Well, that's the you wouldn't have done that. You wouldn't have done that before.
That's not an immediate.
No, you wouldn't have done that before.
That's not who I am. That's not what I believe.
It is the reality the left has created.
I want to be as blunt as possible, because now I'm connecting two dots. Wait a second. The CEO just said that he's forcing that a white qualified guy is not going to get the job. So I see this guy. He might be a nice person. I say, boy, I hope he's not a Harvard-style affirmative action student that has points for, and he landed half of his flight simulator trials.
That's the thing. It's
such a good point.
And by the way,
so fair.
It creates like unhealthy thinking patterns. I don't want to think that way. No. Yeah. And no one should, right? I mean, so then I kind of sit down. I'm like, boy, I hope he knows what he's.
And by the way, then you couple it with the FAA, air traffic control. They got a bunch of morons and affirmative action people. Yeah, it's play cut 112. What is? Can you give me some context of
this is a so when you land, there's a dialogue that goes on between the pilot and air traffic control. So you've got this pilot.
Is this real?
This is real, apparently, and he's having a debate. Well, it's going around. Somebody probably leaked it to James O'Keefe. But like he's having a debate with air traffic control, and she's trying to tell him how she thinks he should land, and he's saying, "Woman, I've been doing this for 15 years. I think I know what I'm doing." And she goes, "I just Googled this."
Do you remember when I said this a couple weeks ago? I said what they're hiring a bunch of blacks for no reason at air traffic control
this started in the Obama years. This is actually
I know.
Story.
I'm saying though this has been going on, and I've been getting whistleblowers from the FAA for years, and people would say you're a racist, you're this. Play cut 112.
For a short approach, if you're going to do a power off 180, that's my point.
Well, okay, I will remember that from now on, no problem.
Yeah, when you ask for a short approach, I expect you to turn your base to beam the numbers.
All right, this will be a full stop for 6-5 Charlie, and maybe we need to talk about that some more because you're the first controller in 15 years that's ever said that.
Well, I'm just, if you ask for a short approach is when you turn your base to beam the numbers. If I know you're a student asking for a short approach, I know you're out there practicing and you probably will extend. But if you're doing something other than a short approach, don't ask for a short approach.
Well, I will definitely look up the definition of short approach because I've never seen where it says you turn base to beam the numbers because I don't see how you could possibly do that.
Well, I Googled it, actually. I Googled short approach, and it says turn your base to beam or before the numbers, and you will land probably.
Is this real?
Charlie did say if he sees a black pilot, he might be worried about whether or not he or she is qualified. But notice how immediately after that line he said that's not what he is, and that's not what he believes. The context is that the four men here were talking about DEI, and the thing is, all of them don't believe in that liberal, ill-based concepts. Charlie believes that there were racial quotas, and if you have quotas to meet and only look at the skin color, gender, and something we cannot change of the candidates during hiring process, you gotta hire someone who are incompetent. And that audio clip is literally a strong proof of that, and how messed up the US was with the DEI culture.
Let me tell you exactly what I said,
Sure
okay?
thing, thank you.
So this was in response, first and foremost, to United Airlines saying that half of all their new pilots that they're going to hire are going to be women or people of color. Currently, they're 15%.
Okay.
So they want to go from 15% to 50%. A conversation then ensued about how every time affirmative action is employed, standards have to be lowered. There's not a single instance where that does not occur. So then I said, boy, if I see a black pilot, I'm now going to wonder, is that individual qualified, or are they selected because of their race? Comma, but that's not who I am, but this makes me think this way. And I stand completely by that statement.
Okay.
Secondly, let me just finish.
Sure thing. Yeah, sorry.
DEI and affirmative action, what it does is it lowers the merit, it lowers the threshold of standards, and increases things that do not matter, such as skin color and ethnic background. So that is what I said.
Charlie literally expressed in the clip and after that podcast that he did not believe in looking at things with a racial lens, but a society and culture where race is always emphasized is gonna make people be like that, which is very unfortunate. Charlie Kirk has always been open to debate and discussion. He believed in the power of peaceful, open discourse. However, over the past couple days we have seen so many comments circulating the notion that somehow Charlie was spewing hate. In response to that claim, I just want to show you all one claim. I believe it is enough to show what Charlie really is.
Everybody, do me a favor. Please be respectful, okay?
Hello. So I have a few leading questions before my main one. Because I have to be honest, I don't really know that much about you. So would you say that you're very religious?
I am religious. However, every one of my political positions is defensible from a non-religious perspective.
Okay, great. So I was under the impression that your beliefs on abortion were stemming from your religious beliefs.
Well, at the core, that is correct, but I can get that it is defensible from using reason and prudence, as I have done the last couple of
Cool. So you're not trying to illegalize abortion based on the Bible?
Well, no, not based on the Bible. My personal conviction comes from the Bible. I want to make abortion illegal because it is the only applicable extension of laws we already and standards we already have in the West. Correct.
I'm sorry, can you maybe rephrase that?
Eliminating abortion is the only logical step while we apply the standard we already have in this country to unborn life. So we have murder laws.
Yes.
Therefore, murder laws should apply to unborn life as it does to born life.
Okay. So, again, reiterating, you're not trying to instate laws based on Christian beliefs because that would be unconstitutional, right?
Well, not again, sort of, but no, I am not using scripture to defend my beliefs. However, my personal convictions start with scripture, but the political views that we're talking about here are all defensible using reason and Western tradition.
Okay. So, great. That's all I needed to know, that you weren't trying to instate laws based on Christian beliefs, because I would not be able to support anything that was so blatantly unconstitutional. But thank you for clarifying that for me. I had a whole thing ready, but I guess that wasn't necessary. Thank you so much.
Well, first of all, just tell me more about how you view politics, or what. Is that okay? Or if not, like, and feel free to walk away. I'm not here.
Maybe not in this crowd.
That's okay. Thank you. What's your name?
My name is Archer.
Archer, thank you for coming up, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you so much. Thank you for clarifying.
And let me just say one last thing. I could tell you probably have a negative impression of Christianity, maybe. I hope one day we can earn back your support to making Jesus Christ your Lord and Savior. I'm sorry if the church has failed you in that way, because I do have strong religious convictions and beliefs, and there is a God who made you and loves you, and he sent his son to die for you.
Her name is Mom.
Okay, well, thank you. I do appreciate the candor and the courage to come up here, but we will pray for you. Thank you.
Okay. I can't get out.
Thank you, Archer.
We all couldn't believe it. Why the demise of such nice, humble, and polite man was followed by all these distorted and inaccurate media reports and all the mockery and defamation on the internet and in reality. The internet in the past couple of days remind me of Isaiah 5:20. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Despite the darkness and absurdity, there is hope. Charlie's passing away has ignited the flames in the hearts of millions. It has rung the alarm bell about political violence like never before. It has awakened the Western Christian civilization that has given in so much in the past 2 decades. Young minds have been coming together in combating hatred, intimidation, and demonization. We still have a long journey to go. This is just the beginning of the movement. In a world filled with lies, chaos, and darkness, you stood up against the spiritual forces of evil. In a crooked generation where there is rapid moral degradation and logic and reason seems to have been fading away in our society, you became the light bringer, a beacon in the West that has been restoring faith, courage, love, and order among the people. You built a platform to educate, train, and empower the youth. You encourage us to be more involved in politics and to seek change in this world where injustices and absurdity are prevalent. You believed in the power of open dialogue. You were a staunch defender of freedom of speech. You would hand anyone a microphone and you would invite them to debate. Many people came at you with bad faith and insults, but you were never truly enraged at any one of them.
Have a nice day. Let's have a conversation.
You are also a devoted Christian. You've always been practicing magnifying Christ and spreading the gospel of the kingdom. You debate anyone not only for changing people's minds, but also for instilling Christ in many of the broken souls. You've inspired so many people, including me. Honestly, I managed to finish making this video despite all difficulties because of you. Your legacy will continue. The impact you've created will be everlasting. Because we are all turning point. And we are all Charlie Kirk.
We are Charlie. Y'all just messed around and made an army. I could feel the shift and we ain't sorry. Jesus coming back, it gon' be gnarly. We are Charlie. We are Charlie.